Okay, so I will call this meeting to order. Is there any changes to the agenda? As I see none. Motion to accept. Councillor Ferguson.
To adopt the agenda as presented.
Any discussion on the motion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. So our first order of business tonight is a public hearing. I will declare this public hearing open and state this hearing is held pursuant to sections 230, 606, and 692 of the MGA 2000 as amended. The purpose of bylaw 05-2022 is to amend the land use district map of the land use bylaw number 22-2007 by redistricting lot 14, block 12, plan 2977 RS from R1 standard detached residential district to R3 high density residential district. The notice of this hearing was given in writing to the applicant, the assessed landowner or landowners, and adjoining landowners, as well as the planning and development officer. The notice of this hearing was advertised on the town's website from April 19th to May 2nd of this year. Presentations are to be brief and to the point. The order of presentations will first be the planning and development officer, followed by those in favor of the bylaw, then those opposed by the bylaw, and lastly, any person deemed to be affected who wishes to be heard. Any person giving presentations, please state your name and address. Planning and development will obviously sit there, but anyone else coming forward, we'll ask you to come sit at the table here. Joanna will turn on the mic and please speak into the mic as clearly and closely as you can. You would give your presentation and then council will ask questions. At the end, council has the ability to have any rebuttal from persons giving presentations. So with that, we will jump into planning and development. So we'll start with you, Lori.
Yeah, your worship and members of council. The purpose of this report is for council to hold the required public hearing and consider second and third reading for bylaw 05-2022. The applicant and landowner is Corey Stab, and the civic address is 323rd Ave Northwest on lot 14, block 12, plan new 2977 RS. As stated, the application is to rezone from R1 standard detached residential district to R3 high density residential district. The subject site is within the residential and general urban designation of the municipal development plan, so no amendment is required to that plan. The Municipal Planning Commission reviewed this application last night at its meeting and have recommended have indicated their support for the bylaw. Referral letters were sent to adjacent property owners. To date, I have heard from one landowner in the area who has indicated that she has no concerns with the amendment if the developer can meet with the requirements of the land use bylaw with respect to setbacks and parking for the proposed development. Attached as well as a letter from Greg Gramiak and Maria Doroshenko expressing concerns with respect to the rezoning. And I've also spoken with other affected landowners who have indicated that they would be attending the public hearing. As indicated, only one plan amendment is required. A municipal development plan is not required to be amended, and there is no area structure plan. The applicant purchased the above noted lands and would like to develop a fourplex on the site. The parcel in question is a little larger than a standard residential parcel at 60 by 107 feet. The applicant is confident he has a building plan that will meet with the regulations of the R3 district as well as all other development requirements. Currently, there are R2 medium density residential developments with semi-detached dwellings on them located immediately north at 321 4th Ave Northwest and two others on the block of 4th Avenue Northwest, i.e. 311, 313 4th Ave Northwest and 299, 301 4th Ave Northwest. In addition, there are two other parcels with two semi-detached dwellings on them that maintain an R3 high density residential districting at 303 and 309 4th Ave Northwest. And attached to the report is a location map that shows you the zoning of the adjacent parcels. So for clarity, semi-detached dwellings and duplexes are permitted in the R2 and R3 districts. Also in 2012, the land use bylaw was amended to create a separate land use district for apartments, the R3A, high density residential apartment district. As such, if these lands are successfully rezoned to R3, any applicant would only be permitted to develop the uses listed, which does not include apartments. So I also wanted to indicate that the merits of the individual development, i.e. the size of the structure, parking, access, outdoor amenity, etc., will be considered at the time of application for development. At that time, the developer will be required to meet all the regulations within the land use bylaw with respect to the proposed development. As such, discussion around detailed aspects of the proposed development should not be considered when making zoning decisions. Zoning decisions should be made with respect to good planning principles and should be high level. Some of those good planning principles would include, does the zoning make sense? Are there potential impacts on neighboring properties, or does the proposed district fit well within the area? That's all I have for now.
Okay, questions for planning and development? Councillor Adams.
Just one of the questions I got here, why with zoning would we pick just one lot in order to change the zone to? Is that more like spot zoning, or should we be looking at a broader picture here if we're ever considering making these changes to an R3?
Council has, I mean, typically we do more than one lot and we don't always spot zone, but council has the ability to do that if they like. In addition, there are lots in the very close vicinity that are that have the R2 medium and high density zoning. So it's not unusual to see this type of application come forward.
Even when it's across the back alley, it's not like it's on the same street though.
Doesn't matter if it is, you can draw an intersecting lines by removing roadways, it's considered adjacent.
Okay.
Yeah.
And realistically, the reason we're only looking at one lot is because that's all the applicant has proposed.
Yeah, I understand that, but as a council, shouldn't we be looking at a broader range rather than just one here and one there? It seems anti-intuitive to zoning. Like zoning is supposed to be a group. It's supposed to keep like-minded properties similar.
Agreed, and we do that. That's how you have that designation in that area, and a different designation in another area. Council has looked at. That's part of our, our MSPs and our land use bylaws to look at those pieces. However, if an applicant wants us to consider something else, we consider it.
Well, I'm not saying not consider it, but
Okay.
It just doesn't seem. I get you're saying it's adjacent by being, but to me, it's on a whole other street. It doesn't, and I get it's adjacent because of that back alley piece, but there's no other properties on that avenue that are similar.
Okay.
Anyways,
Other questions for planning and development? Larry, I have a question. In here, you note that, so this parcel 60 by 107. So you said the parcel in question is larger than a standard residential parcel. What do you consider standard? 50 by 100?
Anywhere from 40 to 50 by 100 is a standard residential parcel, fits in that realm.
And so this is 60 by 107. So it's not like this is a double depth lot. Or
No.
double width or,
No, it's just a bit larger.
okay. Any other questions for planning and development? As I see none, I will move on to those in favor of the bylaw to come forward and speak. Those in favor? So if you want to state your name and address, please use the mic as much as possible. Basically, open discussion. You can share with any information that you'd like.
Okay. My name is Corey Stab. My address is 900 9th Street Southeast. And so I just wrote a little something here. Hello, for those of you who do not know me, my name is Corey Stab. I'm a local developer in the town of Slave Lake. I'm born and raised here and have lived here my whole life. I've done quite a few projects over the years here, but this year I'm hoping to develop the noted property that has brought us all here tonight, 320 3rd Ave Northwest. I would like to rezone this property to R3 because I am interested in building a fourplex on this piece of land. As most of you know, before the fire, there was a bed and breakfast and a threeplex on this land, making it previously an R3 property. In the past, before the fire, what I plan to develop would be very similar structure to the last one that was built here, meaning that the amount of people and the amount of parking spaces should be the exact same. I believe that this project is good for the town in a lot of aspects. I personally like seeing projects being built and revenue going through our community. This project would generate taxes for the town of Slave Lake, give ATCO and other utility companies more meters in Slave Lake. It would give 4 more families a place to stay. This will keep local tradesmen busy in our community. Unless I absolutely have to, I only hire local contractors. This is not my first project in Slave Lake and will definitely not be my last. I love this town and like to see it grow and prosper. Over the years, I plan to develop millions of dollars of real estate in this community, and I truly believe I have the town's best interests at heart. Please consider my proposal to rezone this piece of land so this project can move forward. Thank you.
Okay, any questions from council? If they're, okay, Councillor Adams.
And this is my ignorance, I guess, with what you're developing, but how do you propose to deal with parking and all that kind of stuff for 4 units on a 60 wide lot?
So since it has alley access, I can have 2 families in the back and 2 in the front, is what I was thinking. So there would be parking in the back as well.
Off-street parking kind of thing for the front and stuff?
For the front, concrete driveway that they can pull into. So there'd be nothing on the sidewalk or anything like that.
So 4 vehicle accommodation then? So-
Yes, in the front and then in the rear as well. It'd be kind of mirrored almost.
Recognizing that a lot of those things would have to be dealt with at the development permit
Oh,
stage.
yeah, I get that. Just asking.
But that is the number 1 question, is that density, how is it going to affect that neighborhood?
It should be the same amount of parking that was there 15 years ago, I feel like, just because it previously was an R3 and it did have a 3-plex bed and breakfast. People were coming and going. So it should be very similar to what was previously built there.
Okay, any other questions? As I see none, thank you very much.
Thanks.
At this point, I would ask anyone else in favor of the bylaw to come forward and speak. Anybody in favor? Please state your name and address.
Hello, my name is Miodrag Milanic and I live at 205 12th Street Southeast. And I came to support this idea. I think it's a wonderful idea. We haven't seen a lot of development in the past 5 or 6 years. Besides Ray Stern building a few houses, there was nobody else other than Corey stepping up. In the recent years, we've seen a lot of trades leaving town because there was a lack of work. We've seen a lot of carpenters going into the mills, trying to, support their living. And I think I'm just amazed by his idea. And I strongly believe we should encourage what he's doing. And at least there's somebody that's building something in town, keeping a local trades busy, trying to create more revenue for the property taxes. And I think we should definitely applaud him, for all his effort that he's doing.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
any questions? Okay, thank you. At this point, I ask anybody else in favor of the bylaw to come forward and speak. Anybody else in favor? Lastly, anybody in favor? Going once, going twice. At this point then, anybody opposed to the bylaw who wishes to come forward and speak? Anybody opposed to the bylaw who wishes to come forward and speak? I don't get to pick if you want to go or not. That's up to you.
And it wouldn't be normal if I didn't write it out. So here you go.
Okay, that looks like a full-blown essay.
I came here this evening to express my deep concern over the rezoning of 320 3rd Avenue Northwest, which sits directly across the street from my home. The proposed 2-story fourplex with basement suites will definitely overshadow the majority of single-family, 1-story houses on this section of 3rd Avenue Northwest. Many of them were rebuilt after the fire with an abundance of rules and regulations that were put in place that had to be followed with the utmost diligence. The approval of the fourplex will also mean that there will be a decrease in the privacy for those who live next door. Enjoying the comfort and relaxation of the backyards will take on a whole new perspective. Since this building will occupy almost the full length of the piece of land, there will be little, if any, parking space for the tenants. That means more cars will be parked out front on both sides of the street in front of the other houses. There are already times when parking space is limited on our street. With the increase in traffic this year with school buses and parents trying to find alternate routes to drop off students before and after school, to avoid the congestion of Main Street and in front of Wallstrom School, there will be even more traffic if this building is approved. In the winter months, all snow is plowed to my side, the south side of the street. Often the banks of snow extend from 3 to 5 feet into the street. If cars are also parked on both sides of the street when there is lots of snow, traffic will be reduced to 1 lane. Trying to see over the tops of the banks and the cars parked on both sides of the street will make getting out of my driveway much more difficult. With an increase in the number of cars that will be started to warm up during the winter months, there will also be a substantial increase in exhaust fumes that will affect the quality of air. No one wants to have their houses filled with exhaust fumes for any period of time. Since the number of people who will live in this apartment building is unknown, what can be assumed is that there will be much more activity in and out of the area, and a lot more noise and disturbance will accompany all that takes place. The approval of the rezoning and the construction of the fourplex will certainly affect the dynamics of our community. Placing this building in the midst of single one-story houses will make it stand out, and this will cause people to think twice before buying any house that may be up for sale anywhere near it. Most of us have lived in this area for 20 years or more. We have raised our families here. We have come to share the feelings of helping each other out and looking out for one another. We have stayed here because of the comfort, privacy, and safety we have felt over the years. That will change if this proposal is approved. We are not here about money or taxes. We are here to ask that council definitely consider our perspectives so that the harmony that exists in this section of 3rd Avenue Northwest will be maintained and not permitted to fall by the wayside.
Okay, before we have any questions, Terry, sorry, can you state your
Not
name?
answering question. What?
Can you state your name and address for the record?
I have a suggestion.
Yeah.
I've always been told, because of teaching, that if you're going to complain, then you better have a way to solve the problem. And I wish I did have a way to solve the problem. But unfortunately, all I can say this time is in the process, and whatever happens with the land development and before it comes to council for first reading, it would be a good idea if the residents who live in the area were given a handout to show exactly the process that's followed, how it actually comes to council for first reading before it actually happens. That way, perhaps we can look at the things that are going to be proposed, and maybe there won't be as much feedback as there's going to be tonight. So I realize that probably the people who are in the land development office, who are ever responsible for it, have a lot to do in their hands. And yes, it'll probably cost money to be able to do it. But if there were an interim survey that were done to show the impact of what any building is going to happen in any part of town, then automatically we're all going to have an idea of what's going to happen. And then when we express our concerns, maybe you're going to understand more about where we're coming from. Because in our part on 3rd Avenue Northwest, we're lucky to have the people who live there, who work together, who help one another out. But at the same time, when you look at Wallstrom, that's on the next street over, and the amount of traffic that we have there right now, it's crazy, before school and after school. So if we're going to add a fourplex and it's going to have a lot of people, we have no idea how many are going to be there, it really is going to be a big concern. And I don't appreciate the fact that me, especially because my driveway is right there, that it's hard enough now when there are people parked directly across from my driveway that I have to get around the snowbank and try not to hit them in order to get out. So that's my concern
Okay,
and my suggestion.
okay. Terry, can you do me a huge favor?
What?
Can you do me a huge favor? I need you for the record there to state your name and address.
I don't know. Can you turn up your mic?
Terry, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so for at the start, we need you to, for our own internal records, we need you to state your name and address.
Oh, my name is Terry Mosier. I live at 325 3rd Avenue Northwest.
Perfect, thanks. Questions for Terry? Councillor Hughes.
So you just mentioned obviously the parking concerns and the congestion after school. Is that kind of during the peak timing of school, or do you experience the parking congestion there all day? I just looking for
In the
more
mornings
information.
between probably 20 after 8 until 8:45 in the morning. The school buses use our street, as do parents use the street to try to let their kids off on the opposite side of the street instead of trying to park in front of it. And after school, it's just as bad, only it's worse.
Okay.
Because of the flow of traffic that's there. And I mean, if you take the time, anyone who takes the time to look at the amount of traffic from Wallstrom School and on Main Street, you can understand why they want to come across up our street and then go behind the mall.
Right. Okay. So not all day long though,
No.
necessarily. Just during those peak times.
But there are-
Actually,
I mean,
I
there
call it
are
rush minute in
time-
Slave
no,
Lake,
it's
the
not
time
all
when
day
school
long.
gets out and it's like, parking and lots of traffic in our community during those times, but
No,
yeah, okay. So not throughout the day typically
No.
though, outside of.
just really in the morning between those hours and then after school, it's bad.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Giroux.
Thank you for coming tonight. I can appreciate that you mentioned you've lived there for a very long time, over 20 years. So I'm just, since before it was already a threeplex and a bed and breakfast, do you remember before what it was like with regards to parking when it was like that? Has there been a change since it was rezoned?
I promised
R1?
myself I would not go back to that, but I will tell you. And I'll try to make it as short as I can. When I first moved to 3rd Avenue Northwest, there was a building that was kind of similar to this one that was proposed. And I had no idea what it was about when I first moved there because I just needed a place to live instead of living in somebody's basement. However, the experience that I had with there is that there was absolutely no privacy. It became a gathering place for a lot of the students that I taught in school. And even though I complained that they were constantly in the window or sitting on the curb watching my house and they knew more about what I was doing, that when I complained, I was told there was nothing I could do about it because they weren't doing anything. So we happened to be away from home one day and they broke into my house. And so as a result of that, I was informed by the RCMP that what I needed to do was to put double locks on my house, lock my gate, put a lock container on my cars so they couldn't get in there, and that I needed to put motion sensors and huge spotlights out front. The problem was, for me, it's a big expense. And it happened during the day. So what are the motion sensors and the lights going to do? The other thing that happened is that when they decided to subdivide the parts of the apartment, whether it was approved or not, then it became a major problem because there were more and more people and more activity. And the police were there quite often because of the fights that were going on the side of the building and with the illegal activity that was happening in the back apartments. And I guess the final straw was that one of the people who lived there decided to wreck the whole thing and he threw everything outside. So it's not favorable and I'm not going to go into any more. I'm just telling you that it was not good because what happened with breaking into my house is that it also affected my job, because there were a lot of parents that were upset that I would have the audacity to charge the students. And I didn't do that, but it made my life a living hell. And my kids at that time were young, and it wasn't very easy to try to console my son and my daughter at night when they said, "Dad, are those bad kids from your school going to come back again tonight?" And all I could say was, "No, we're going to look after you."
Okay. Other questions? As I see none. Thanks, Terry.
Okay.
At this point, I would ask anyone else that is opposed to the bylaw to come forward and speak. Anyone opposed? If you could state your name and address.
Stacy and Don Hanson, 324 3rd Ave Northwest. I'm certainly not as put together as Terry, but here's my little scribbles. So I will say I'm not in favor of the rezoning. Reason being is all of our homes are single dwelling, single family dwellings. It is an R1 now. I'm not sure what it was when before the fire, when it was a 3-plex. I don't.
I was told that was grandfathered in because it was built before.
Yeah, I have a question for Lori about that at the end, but I'll come back to it later.
Where do I begin? So, snow plowing in our alley. Was it done once this year?
No.
No. We did have Dean graciously push some snow into the other lot so that it was easier to get into our garage, which was permitted to have a back alley garage at the time of development. And so what I'm reading here from what Corey had dropped off with us was it's a 2-story 4-plex with basement suites, which means to me 8 suites, which would be 16 vehicles. If it is just a 4-plex, definitely that's 8 vehicles. But then if you're going to have concrete driveways in the front, is there going to be enough for landscaping? Like what we had to do a certain amount of landscaping in the front of our house. The school traffic, like Terry mentioned, is quite a bit morning and in the afternoon. I worked at home for 3.5 years in the front room, so I've watched it all. Sorry. 15 years ago, or whenever the triplex was there, the owner did live on site for most part. And like Terry said, there were still problems, absolutely. But with not having an owner on site in a rental property, it kind of could get away from you. The parking, definitely, we turn into a one-way street when the snow is plowed on the other side because we have a sidewalk that's never plowed on our side. But I did just notice today that there was a bed and breakfast that was refused a development permit today, just down the street. And I know that's kind of a home-based business, different, but it is in an R2 section as well. So just stating my points.
Okay.
Because even if you do look at the other road on the other side where all the duplexes are across from the school, I think it's 4th or whatever it is.
You're talking on 4th Ave?
Yeah,
Okay.
even they have driveways and everything. And even during the summer or whatever, that's still a one-way road. People park in the driveways, they park on the road, they park on the other side. It's constantly a one-way road. It's almost like the road by Speedy as well. Like you just get too many vehicles.
And I'm not sure, but I think where it's R3, right across from Walsham School on 4th Ave, I think those are all, they're duplexes, but they're detached. So I think they'd fit in R2. I don't know. Anyways, just
Okay.
not for the
I think for the
rezoning.
most part, people just like to keep it R1.
Single family.
Single family house.
Okay. Yeah, so a couple comments I'll just throw out there that number one, there's no way that this could turn into 8 units.
Okay.
Wouldn't be zoned for that. And when it comes to, I guess from all the neighborhood perspectives and council perspectives and municipal planning commission, which is made up of public members and council members, they still have to meet all the pieces. So they still have to have the same amount of setbacks. They still have to have certain parcel coverage in the front. It still have to be built, to certain heights. It can't exceed and exceed widths. That's not what we're here to debate today. It's just a matter of could this fit there? But I want to assure you that if in the event that it did go there, all those pieces still have to be looked at. Like those can't be ignored. They're just the next step of the process.
And public, and policing would be, I guess, yeah.
Any questions? Councillor Hughes.
Just to Tyler's point there about all aspects of it being looked at, I just wanted to go back to the comment about the bed and breakfast situation. There was other issues as well.
Okay, no, it
Yeah,
was just
so
something I
it
noticed.
wasn't, you know, a
Yeah.
direct thing, so.
Yeah, the minutes of MPC are obviously public and it's public meetings, but with regards to the bed and breakfast, basically there's also a home-based business that was a part of it. And with regards to our planning rules, and Lori, I should have most of this right, I think, but there's a certain percentage of the space that can be used for that. And this particular application, it didn't meet those requirements. So that was the reason for the refusal.
Okay, no, just curious. It was, yeah, I don't think the minutes for that are out yet. So it was just noticed today. So,
Okay, any other questions? If not, thank you very much.
all right, thank you.
Next, I would ask anyone else opposed to the bylaw that wishes to come forward and speak. Anyone else opposed that wishes to come forward and speak?
All right,
You can start with your name and address.
Mike McLeod, 316 3rd Avenue Northwest. Okay, I got the apartment on the, I don't know, I guess they pretty much covered everything they wanted to say, but I just still like everything from the apartments, like they're gonna be noisy. I know there's gonna be a few parking spots, but like we got 2 and we got trailers, we got campers, like we're tight as it is already. And it's the parking, like we're fighting over garbage spots already. And, you know, there's gonna be 4 more units. That's not just gonna be 2 vehicles, it's gonna be 4 per unit, I'm thinking, average, depending. And the work schedules, right? There's gonna be shift work, there's gonna be busy all night, all day. And the snow, same thing for the snow plowing. What else is there? Like I said, there's gonna be securities, like we got no privacy. We got absolutely no privacy. Like there could be people watching our kids. We don't know what they're capable of. You know, it's just, we're right in the backyard. We're always playing constantly with our kids and not knowing who's gonna be living next door, who's gonna be coming in and out. Like, we're gonna have more issues. I don't know. And like for garbage pickup, we're having, like you said, the garbage is an issue. Like we're having a tough time trying to keep up. Sometimes we got to throw in the neighbors just to, you know, get our garbage out. I don't know. I think it's devalued. As soon as I heard that, we put our house up for sale. We're leaving. We've been here 8 years. We have good neighbors, good neighborhood. As soon as I got that paper coming in the mail, I put it up because no privacy, decrease the value of everything. It's going to be a big issue. So we posted our house for sale for that matter.
Okay.
Just letting you guys know.
Anything else, Mike?
Just put yourselves in our shoes. If you guys live next door to us or same setup, if you guys had the same building coming up, I think you guys would have a big concern. I don't know, it's pretty tough. So I'd like you guys to think about that.
Okay.
Yep, that's everything.
Any questions for Mike? Councillor Gramlich.
Just a question on the privacy. And anyone could also answer. Are you guys worried about the height of the building or the extra
It's just
people in the building?
more people, the height of it, like they're gonna look right into our windows. They're gonna look right in our yards, what we have. If we're gone for a weekend, things gonna be gone, right? Like Mr. Mosier said, his stuff got broken into. We're gonna have to put more security alarms or be more aware. We're not sure. It's just gonna be a big issue.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Anything else?
No, thanks, Mike.
Thanks.
At this point, ask anyone else opposed to the bylaw to come forward and speak.
Your worship, members of council,
Greg Gramiak, 329 3rd Avenue Northwest.
Okay.
I agree with a fair bit of what the previous have said. You have a letter from me as well. I just want to reiterate a couple of things in my letter, though. One of the things is definitely parking. The snow on the street. One of the other people alluded to the snow being piled to the south side of the street. This year, for sure, there was definitely one lane of traffic down the street and a safety issue without a doubt. The snow clearing in the alleys, if this is a mirrored complex, and fourplexes, I think, don't get me wrong, are a great idea in the right place. The alleys are not cleaned on a regular basis. So if we're taking if the intent is to have the building mirrored, to have the same parking as the back as the front, what you're going to get is if they can't get to their parking stalls in the back, they're going to park in the front street. If you look at 4th Ave, that's a perfect example of a place where the R3 makes total sense. You've got development on one side of the street, you've got the school on the other, but you look at what that's done to the density alone in that. I know there's a lot more along that street, but you take that density of a fourplex and you put it in, ironically, a average sized old lot in town. That's not bigger than it's somewhat bigger than a standard town lot, but it's not a lot bigger to accommodate what I believe would be an issue with the parking. And the density is going to change the look and the feel of the neighborhood. I wouldn't say we're going to get a bunch of bad people move into the neighborhood, but you're going to get more people move into the neighborhood. More people in that small area, the increased parking on the street, the snow concerns we have at this point in time, I think is just going to be a recipe for frustration for council, bylaw, and the people living in that neighborhood.
Okay. Any questions for Greg? Going once, going twice. Okay, thanks. At this point, I'd ask anyone else opposed to the bylaw to come forward and speak. Anybody else opposed? Last call for anybody opposed to come forward and speak. As I see none, at this point, I would ask anyone deemed affected who wishes to come forward and speak. Anyone deemed affected? As I hear or see no one, I will allow rebuttals for many council members. So actually, I just have a question for you, Lori, about the zoning piece. And so, the discussion was that at one point this was a triplex, but this is zoned R1 right now. So I'm just curious to know how it was a non-conforming, or we changed the zoning at some point, or what the deal is there.
I would have to.
Lori, sorry, your mic's not on.
I would be guessing at this point with respect to this lot. I'm not positive. It looks to be as though it was probably a non-conforming, but
Okay.
I can't verify that without looking at the land-based file.
Okay. More curiosity than anything. Any other questions for planning and development? Councillor Adams.
A couple. We referenced that there is an R3 there. That was an R3 from when it used to be row housing, correct?
On the lot or the one on 3rd Ave?
On 4th
Ave. Yeah, it was row housing there.
Right.
And that's the R3 zoning
That's
was
the only
in
reason
place
why
at
it
that
was
time.
From back then.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, unless anybody else wants to go.
Keep going.
All right.
Get them out.
So are we allowed to have a main entrance on a back alley since it's not one that we maintain?
Yeah, there's nothing in the land use bylaw that doesn't stipulate that you have to have a main entrance off a paved road, as long as you have access to the property. It can be off the lane or it can be off the paved road, doesn't matter.
Okay.
And then as far as an R3 zoning, just to clarify, you are allowed to have duplexes in an R3 as well as an R2, right?
That's correct.
And then I guess just a general comment more than a question is I totally agree that we need to do infill properties. It does bring benefit to me though in this section. It's more suited to an R2, not an R3.
And we'll get into that debate when we get to the report.
Fair enough.
Any other questions? As I see none, I will declare that this public hearing is closed and we'll jump into the rest of our meeting. I did say rebuttal, sure. I'll declare this public hearing is open again. Honestly, if you want to come forward and you want to say you've got something you have to add, I don't, just come forward and use the mic.
So yeah, I just wanted to clear up. I did have plans to do a 2-story before, but now it'll be a single story. Because it's, the reason it was going to be a 2-story is because I was originally planning to have 4 other families under it. So it basically has to be, but now that's not the case. I'm going to develop that basement, do a single story. That is one point. So it's not going to be towering over stuff.
Okay.
No matter what, there's going to be a family there. You're not going to be able to pile the snow there anymore. That is definitely going to be stopped for sure. And it's kind of sounding like people are assuming it's going to be rowdy over there. I'm obviously going to do tenant screening. I don't want people wrecking my brand new stuff. Like, I'm going to do screening and there'll be applications. I wouldn't just let anyone start renting there. It's not going to be a big party house or anything. And yeah, just, we want to see these lots get filled and built and things get developed in this town again. And yeah, no, I just wanted to clear up those points. That is all.
Okay. Any
Yeah,
last questions?
but it will be a single story now. So that's not, shouldn't be concerning.
Councillor Hughes.
So it seems like everyone's under the impression that that wasn't the case. Did you just decide this recently, or when did that change take place?
So before I was going for R3A, and then we found that I didn't quite have the width on the parcel of land. So then it went back to, then I applied for R3.
Okay.
So at first, I did actually go to the residents in all the adjoining properties and give them that paper, shows the building I was planning on doing, but that is no longer the case because that was actually a blueprint made for bachelor suites in the basement, but it'll no longer, I can no longer do that. So it's not going to be 8 people. It's just going to be the 4.
Okay, and you don't plan on selling this building? You're going to build it and rent it out
keep
to?
it very long term.
Okay, and Lori, you have this plan with the 1 story now, like?
Yes, I have a copy of the blueprint that he was looking for, and it is a 1-story development, but it is correct.
A
Originally,
reminder that we're here to look at zoning. So theoretically, they can change that tomorrow.
that's right.
You can sell it, anything can happen.
I could, but it would cost twice the amount of money to go up another story. And if you're looking at it from that perspective, if I'm renting it, it would just be a lot more money I wouldn't get more rent or anything because of it. So the reason I wanted to go 2-story before was just so you can fit 8 people. Like, there was separate entrances and stuff, but it didn't work out. I wasn't wide enough to do that. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Any other questions? Okay.
I just have a question for Lori.
Okay.
What's the max?
Right, if we're done with Corey, then I'll let him go sit down there and we'll, there's no questions for Corey? Okay.
Sorry, Lori, I just wanted to clarify the maximum density that's allowed in the R3.
Oh. I don't have the bylaw in front of me. I believe it's like, depending on the lot size, it's like 16 units per acre, I believe is what it is for R3. However, we don't have anywhere near an acre. So you're probably looking at maximum 4 units based on the size of the lot. But that's a guess because I don't have the bylaw in front of me.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Right there. Okay.
Like I said, we're already having a tough time, even though it's gonna be a 4-plex, not 8, whatever, right? Just gotta throw it out there. Same thing, privacy.
Points taken. Okay. Okay, if there's no more questions, I will now declare this public hearing closed again. And we'll move on with the rest of our meeting. So we've got minutes of our previous meeting held on April 12th on page 3 in our package. Any issues with those minutes? I know that Councillor Brandel sent some stuff and I know we cleaned up some stuff digitally, but I haven't got my paper one in front of me. So I'm assuming those are corrected already? On digital, okay. Councillor Adams.
Make motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. We then have minutes from April 19th on page 13 in our package. Councillor Gramlich.
With my Smarties. Make a motion to accept the minutes from April 19th, 2022 as presented.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. We got question period for any quick little CAO update things that CAO wants to share and or questions from council.
Be happy to answer any questions council may have.
Any questions from council? Councillor Adams.
Well, actually, one comment about the signs going up around town. Quite happy to see a lot of those going up. It looks good. And they were, I must say, I watched a couple of them go up and they're doing them fast. I was surprised how quickly they can do that. But my question ties into the CJ Schurter bus exit piece. Have we looked at all into that? I know this is an ongoing piece, but into making that no parking zone at all changed or addressed?
So our operations director and our project manager met with CJ Schurter staff and staff from High Prairie School District. There were some changes that they were going to be doing with signage. And I'm not sure exactly on the status of all this because they also needed to get some materials in place too for some of those changes. They were going to try the signage first before they tried any other of the more complicated engineering pieces.
Other questions? Councillor Hughes.
Gary, just wondering if you could give us a quick little update about pothole repairs. I know they were working very quickly in front of McDonald's. Just wondering if there's any other follow-up and what the plan might be in the next week or two.
To my knowledge, we a couple of different phases. Of course, our own crews were doing pothole repairs. I heard that we have gone through a significant amount of material. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but it was a lot of pothole fill material already. Pothole repairs are going to continue on. And also too, on Main Street, we had a company that was hired to do the plastic asphalt or plastifalt, whatever you want to call that product. They were working on a number of repairs there. Now that product is better for certain applications than others, as we're finding out. So more of those larger cracks type of pieces. So that's what that company's been doing on Main Street. But we're going to be continuing on certainly with potholes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Just along the line of potholes there, so one of the areas that we continue to get feedback from the public on is around the intersection of Highway 2 and Main Street. And so I know that approximately 2.5 years ago, the province announced that they were going to move forward with the plan to do some paving in there. And we saw some things happen last year and then kind of demobilize. And I heard they took a penalty and they were going to resume this year. And so we're not able to do any of the repairs that those are self in that right away. Can we just check in with the province again with our contacts there to say, what does the construction schedule look like? And maybe post that so our public knows what's going on.
Certainly, I had a conversation with them about a month ago, and they were still pushing the contractor to be doing the work, and they firmly believed it would be happening this spring. So we can certainly follow up on schedule.
I'm just curious to know if it's a May event or an August event. Any other questions? As I see none, we will jump into reports and new business. And the first one is the report for the bylaw 05/2022. And so public hearing was just held. And so Lori, is there any new information to share?
The only thing I was going to share is that often when we're looking at these land use bylaw amendments from a planning perspective, we're looking at other uses in the neighborhood that are of similar density. So we do have R2 and R3 in that 2-block radius. Also look at proximity of the area in relation to commercial areas or the downtown. So this block is two blocks from Main Street. So it's typical to see medium and higher density developments as you transition away from commercial areas and then branch out. So I just wanted to put that in there. And then again, I just wanted to reiterate that the planning department would be considering an application for development that would need to meet all of the requirements of the land use bylaw like any other development. So putting that out there as well. That's it. Don't have anything else.
Okay. Questions, comments from council? Councillor Adams.
This is my own ignorance on this part as far as the zoning piece goes, but when we changed from R1 to R2 zoning on south of that, so over on Second there, was that, and it's in a big block, right? That wasn't done one by one. That was done in a big block. How does that occur? Why was that done in a larger section than a one spot zoning kind of idea?
That likely was done without having the bylaw in front of me. It was likely done when the downtown plan was adopted in the 80s. So they would have, at that point, they would have, and that's typical when you adopt an area structure plan, is to decide what your zoning is going to be around the downtown core, including the core. And the old ASP, the boundaries extended a little farther out east and west than they do on the new downtown plan. So I believe that R2 zoning, that whole block of, would have been done at that time.
So we would have, as a council, would have decided this whole section, we're now changing it from an R1 to an R2 for future development.
Yeah, based on the area structure plan, right? There would be all these policies and principles about how you want that area to develop out, and then you would establish the zoning for it.
But all the housing was already in place, right?
Yes, so then there were a number of non-conforming issues, right?
Okay.
Right,
Okay.
yeah.
Other questions, comments from council? Going once, going twice. Councillor Ferguson.
I'll just make some comments here. So I heard a lot of comments made specifically around, parking, snow clearing, setbacks, heights, and I'd just like to reiterate that a lot of those issues, they actually fall into the development permit stage, and they're not to be addressed at the zoning stage. Not to say that they're not important, but that's something that the development authority themselves addresses. With this specific development, I do see that it is close to a lot of existing R2 and R3 developments. It's not like it would stand by itself with not surrounded by any R2 or other R3 high density units. We do have a vacancy problem. In fact, statistical vacancy in Slave Lake right now is around 0%. So we definitely have a need for more housing, and we've had limited development over the last few years. So for those reasons, I am in favor of this.
Okay. Councillor Adams.
My concern on this, when we're saying there's other R3 zoning in the area, it's misleading. That R3 zoning actually should be just an R2 zoning. It is duplexes that are down there, not fourplexes or anything like that. They're multiple duplexes. So taking this and saying it's similar to that, I don't think is necessarily fair. Putting something like this or a whole section of this, of the Northwest, into an R2 zone, I'd be more in favor than just picking one spot and saying this one lone piece of land in the middle of R1 and R2 is going to be the only R3.
Okay. Councillor Granlund.
Yeah, to go off what both gentlemen said, I agree with both of you, but I'm more inclined to side with Councillor Adams. I'm not a fan of spot zoning, and this is exactly what it is. And what ends up happening is it changes the dynamic of a community, and you see those people here expressing those concerns right now. And although that a lot of those concerns will come at the next level, it's spot zoning, and I'm not a fan of that. So.
Okay, starting to see how the vote's going to go. Any other comments? Councillor Drew.
I agree with both of you. Sorry, I'm losing my voice, so I don't mean to sound horrible here. Yeah, stay away. It's fine. So I obviously appreciate all of the residents' concerns tonight. I think there are some things that are more systemic problems from an operations standpoint, such as snow removal and congestion during parking times. I think these issues are going to exist regardless of if you add more tenants there. For instance, a single home could be built there and individual rooms could be rented out, and you could have 4 or 5 people living there as well. So the fact that this will bring increased traffic to the neighborhood, I can appreciate that, but I think some of these issues are going to exist regardless. I don't necessarily agree with spot zoning either, but I do like the idea of encouraging development in our area. So I'm a little bit torn on this one.
Okay. Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, I am actually really torn as well. I definitely want to see new development happening, but after hearing from residents' concerns as well, I'm definitely very conflicted on this. I'm happy to hear that it's going to be more of a one story, but I am concerned about some of the logistics surrounding it, as I know we're not supposed to be at this stage. But I agree with Councillor Drew's assessment that some of these issues are maybe more of an operational issue. And also, you know, things like school traffic and those types of things, you get those whether you live across from Roland Michener and all those surrounding areas at all times of days too. So just weighing those pros and cons, you know, yeah, I'm very torn as well at the moment.
Okay. So some people decided, some undecided. And I guess it's my turn. So I'll weigh in with my 2 cents, which is usually about $5 worth. So I'll start out and say, you know, Slave Lake does have an issue. We're, you know, as part of our strategic planning, we talk about economic development. We want to see developers. We have a lack of developers in the Slave Lake area. That has caused issues. We need to see infill. We need to see places built. We need to see growth. We have a vacancy issue. It results in an affordable housing issue. And the easiest way to deal with that is to basically add more inventory. And so realistically, I need more Corys, not less of them. That being said, stuff has to make sense and it has to fit. And as much as, you know, I'm a firm believer in a property that's used strictly for rentals can be fantastic and it can be horrible. And it totally depends on how it's operated. And that's not what I'm asked to decide today. I think when it comes to parking and setbacks and the height of buildings or whatever else, I think that those things can be an issue for sure, but we have another process that we're not requested to evaluate today that will deal with all those things. I don't think just because you add density that you're going to add crime. I totally don't believe that. I don't think it's going to take away from privacy. I can't agree with that because we have apartment buildings, we have other buildings in town, we have row housing. If I look at R3 on the other side of this block, I don't think that all those people are criminals living on that side. That being said, I do agree that density causes operational problems. I do agree that it affects neighborhoods. I do agree that it affects the quality of life for people that live over there. And I will say that I hope in the future that we see more development and more infill coming. But realistically, if this was an R2 application, I think I could get my head wrapped around it. But because it's R3, if I look at the other R3s that exist in this area, they're a significantly different size and parcel coverage. And I think it makes sense. I think we're taking something and plopping right in the middle to add some duplex type stuff. Where we're adding a bit of density to that area. I can get my head wrapped around that. But in an R3, I just can't. I don't think it makes sense. So that's where, as a result, I will not be in favor of it. Any other further discussion, comments? If not, we would require a motion, which is on page 21. Councillor Ferguson.
Bylaw number 05-2022 to amend the land use district map of the land use bylaw number 22, 2007 by redistricting lot 14, block 12, plan 2977 RS from R1 standard detached residential district to R3 high density residential district receives second reading.
Any further discussion on that motion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That is defeated. So there's no need for third reading and we'll move on to our next report. So this one is for first reading on page 27 in our package. 5 minutes. Okay, we'll take a 5-minute recess. Sorry, council's been going since 4 o'clock already here. So we'll take a 5-minute recess and come back. Okay. This thing says audio override again. So it automatically comes on. Okay, call this meeting back to order. So we have first reading for motocross track and park CDC. So the name of the applicant is the Motocross Association. And so because this is not generated by us.
Nope, sorry, this is not a land use bylaw amendment. This is a development permit application. Council direct control.
Okay,
That's why it's here.
okay. Okay, then I'll turn the floor over to you, Lori.
Sure. The purpose of this report is for council to consider a development permit application for a motocross track and park at the Flat Top area located on part of the northwest quarter of 1972-5 west of the 5 and part of the northeast quarter of 2472-6 west of the 5 in the CDC Council Direct Control District. The applicants are Slave Lake Motocross Association and the owners of the property are Alberta Environment and Parks. The northwest of 1972-5 west of the 5 is within the boundaries of the town of Slave Lake. The other partial quarter of the northeast 2472-6-5 is within the boundaries of the municipal district. So the park almost sits dead center over the boundary. In accordance with section 111.2, which is the CDC district, all developments must comply with provisions of any statutory plan affecting the land proposed to be developed, and all land use applications shall be regulated by appropriate development standards as deemed necessary by council. The application was forwarded to the municipal district of Lesser Slave River. As I said, the motor park track straddles the municipal boundaries, and Holden for the MD has indicated that the MD does not issue development permits on Crown land where a disposition has been granted to the developer, and as such only the town's development process would be required for this application. We referred the application to the fire chief on March 3rd, and he has indicated he has no concerns with the application. So on January 18th, the Slave Lake Motocross Association entered a disposition DML 210065 with the Alberta government for a miscellaneous lease for the above noted lands, which allows for recreational development, commercial. This disposition will expire on January 17, 2026. Among other things, the disposition requires the Slave Lake Motocross Association to obtain all federal, provincial, and municipal permits and approvals as applicable with respect to land and use of lands as prescribed. The disposition also establishes guidelines for development of the site and restrictions with respect to natural and protected features. The applicants have completed an occupied space development permit application, and they have submitted a site plan which is attached to this report. The applicants indicate that the motocross track has existed on the lands in the past and that this development would allow reopening of the park and development associated with that endeavor. It's worthy of note that the CDC district does not contain a list of permitted or discretionary uses. And as such, it provides council with a great deal of latitude when approving developments in this district. Further, there are no appeals to the decision on an application in the CDC district. That said, the decision is advertised for a period of 2 weeks anyway. The planning department has no concerns with this application at this time and feels that the development should have no negative impacts on neighboring properties and brings forward an excellent opportunity for outdoor recreation. And I've given you the motion, and you'll note that all the conditions are attached, and that's a requirement under the MGA, that the conditions for approval are included in the motion.
Okay.
Any questions?
Questions from council? I'll start. So Lori, on page 62 of our package there, you've got the location map. And so the red circle is the motocross track itself, correct? The area that's going to occupy?
Yeah, it's not the exact shape, but that's
the general idea, right?
Yes.
So it's CDC already, correct?
Yeah, yes.
And then, so the portion then that's just west of that, because it's, it's sitting on two portions of land by the looks of it, right?
Yeah, the portion that's west is in the MD.
Okay.
And they're saying they're not going to issue a development permit because they don't do that where there's a disposition that exists.
Okay.
And so all we're doing today is just approving the development permit in the CDC.
Okay. Okay, any questions, comments? I'll just throw out that I think it's a great thing, to see that we have amenities in this area that are being used again. To see a group of volunteers coming together and creating another opportunity for people that live here to take part in. I think it's a great thing to see. So I'm totally in favor of this. Councillor Ferguson,
I'll make a motion.
feel free.
On May 3rd, 2022, council approves development permit number 60222 for the development of a motocross park, track and park in the CDC Council Direct Control District on part of the Northwest Quarter 19-72-5-W5 and part of the Northeast Quarter 24-72-6-W5 located in the flat top area, subject to the attached conditions.
Do you want us to read out all these conditions? Probably.
No.
No? Okay. There's a lot. So to the subject conditions as indicated within our package. Any further discussion on the motion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll jump to page 63 in our package. Roland.
Good evening, your worship and members of council. The purpose of tonight's report is to bring for approval outstanding utility transfers to property taxes for amounts outstanding as of April 25th, 2022. Utilities that are 90 days past due total $44,344. Arrears letters have been sent to all residents via email or mail about past overdue amounts. This will be the second transfer to tax rolls for the current year. February 28th, 2022. We made a transfer of $39,533. In 2021, we completed transfers to tax rolls 4 times. The total amount transferred in 2021 was $130,756, and tonight's is just asking to get approval to transfer the current utility arrears over 90 days as of April 25th.
Okay, questions for Roland? Motion, Councillor Adams.
Actually, question.
Go.
Just for my understanding on this, so in the last 90 days, or utilities are 90 days past due, and you're saying we do this every 3 months. We're transferring 40 grand every 3 months to.
Yeah, we roughly whatever the outstanding balance is there. So, last year we did it 4 times with roughly between $30,000 and $50,000 each time.
Are we actually ever collecting on these, or does the access to the utility continue, or?
Yeah, we don't interrupt the utility service. So, and ultimate collection is assured because we transfer to the property tax roll and then deal with it through that process. So once it's transferred to the tax roll, it stops becoming a utility receivable and becomes part of the tax.
So then there's no interest on that after it transfers?
As long as they're, good standing on their taxes. So.
Any other questions? If not, Councillor Drew.
Sound horrible, but I'll be it resolved that council directs administration to transfer utility arrears over 90 days as of April 25th, 2022 to their property tax rolls.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Okay. Now that the snow's gone, let's talk about snow removal, hey? Page 65 of our package.
So, good evening. I'm here tonight to first talk about some enforcement options for reoccurring snow removal and unsightly property issues, and then to update or potentially update the 2 bylaws that they affect. So it was brought forward at a council meeting on November 30th to look at some enforcement options on getting better compliance with snow removal on sidewalks adjacent to properties and unsightly properties, and just to figure out how we can be a little bit more efficient in that. So we did
bring forward a list of questions to our lawyers with Brownlee, and to make sure, because a lot of this is governed by the Municipal Government Act, and want to make sure that it fits within that and that it's still legally enforceable. So from Brownlee's recommendations, we have recommended a few small changes to our current bylaws. So there's two primary areas that we wanted to look at. So one is regarding deploying a contractor without giving written notice to clear unsafe sidewalks and tidy unsightly properties. So when it comes to clearing sidewalks, it is part of the Municipal Government Act. And if our bylaw does state that we can do this, that is something that is permissible, is to deploy a contractor and get sidewalks cleared previously. And I think I missed this on, I provided a list of updates, but we did add this in. So previously, our bylaw was written that we couldn't go in and clear sidewalks for no reason, but we have proposed that we update, or not for no reason, but without an emergency situation. So we have updated our bylaw to read that we could deploy a contractor should the need arise to clear snow and ice only. So we have also proposed, based on the recommendations from Brownlee, that dirt, debris, and other obstacles is not part of snow removal. So that should be removed from the snow removal bylaw and then put into the community standards bylaw. However, based on the Municipal Government Act, you cannot collect on removal, or you cannot deploy a contractor to remove dirt, debris, and other obstacles. You can only, based on the Municipal Government Act, deploy a contractor without notice to remove snow and ice. So that's one of those quirky MGA things. So we have updated our bylaw, just again with the recommendations to focus, like we said, we're talking about snow removal in hopefully no more snow, but we've just taken that out of the snow removal bylaw. And we wanted, another suggestion along with that was to make sure that we have a clear policy regarding that, as well as emergency situations. So we can go and clear without any notice for emergency situations, even if a contravention hasn't happened according to the bylaw. So hypothetically, you know, if there was I'm trying to think of what one, I had some written down, but anyways, if you had had to service utility underground or things like that, you could clear a sidewalk without giving any notice, and if it wasn't a contravention. So we just wanted to go back, and that is something that we plan to do prior to the next snow season, is create a policy around this so that there's some more clear guidelines as to what an emergency situation is and when we would deploy contractors without notice. And then it's also recommended that if we change our bylaw, that we do a good job of communicating this to the public so that they're aware of the change. It should be noted, though, that we can't do this with the community standards bylaw regarding an unsightly property. So the big difference is sidewalks are technically the town's property that we expect the homeowner to look after, whereas the property is the property owner's space. So we can't enter it without proper written notice, and we can't get them to, we can't go into their property and do the work for them without giving them a reasonable amount of time to fix that, and without following some things in the MGA. So an unsightly property requires that a municipality is entering the property and an enforcement order has to be given. So, and then we'd have to give written notice to, as per the MGA, in order to effect remedy. So, and then if the person's failing to comply with the enforcement order, then, and we also have to determine that a court order is not required to enter that property. And then the other thing that was brought up was issuing one single compliance letter for compliance for both snow removal and an unsightly properties or grass cuttings. So this cannot happen based on the Municipal Government Act. You cannot issue a compliance order if a contravention has not yet happened. So there were some suggestions as to issuing escalating fines in order to try and get compliance. So this is something that we already do. So we just have to make sure that we're following through on that. And again, that's something that a communication piece would likely be beneficial there, to let people know that if you're not following the community standards bylaw, that there are escalating fines and expectations that is looked after. We have in the bylaw also, so there is no standard as far as how long turnaround time is, but reasonable notice has to be given. So reasonable notice is open to interpretation. Previously, we had 14 days. We have reduced it to 10. We felt that that was a reasonable amount of time to give people for compliance on unsightly properties. Yeah.
Okay. Let's jump into questions from council or comments. Councilor Adams.
Okay, just so that I understand how this is being worded. If I don't shovel my sidewalk, the town could come shovel it for me and send me a bill
Yes.
without telling me it needed to be shoveled.
Yes, but we would come up with a policy around that, and it has to be a contravention of the bylaw. So we give people 24 hours after the last snow has fallen. So we wouldn't come, like, hypothetically, if the snow had fallen and we wanted to just go clear and then charge you for it, we'd have to wait for that 24 hours to happen. So.
Okay. Councillor Ferguson.
But as always, I mean, community services and bylaws taking a educational approach to this first, right?
Correct. Yes.
Councillor Drew.
I just have a question regarding procedure, because I noticed that you mentioned there's obviously going to be policy implications and that there's going to have to be policy changes. Are these the types of policies that are dealt with in an administrative level? Do these come back to council? I don't know what happens.
So internal, so this one would be like an internal policy. So we generally don't bring those back to council.
Okay. I'll throw out a comment. I don't necessarily love this. And so I'll start with this premise of when council had this discussion in the past, this was largely around the fact that, like, my God, I wanted to make our bylaw officer's job easier. I wanted to make it easier for the public. I think it's frustrating for our bylaw to go out and write the same people the same ticket every year for the same infractions. Some of those come from snow removal, but a lot of come from unsightly, from cutting grass, and so on and so forth. The amount of time and legal energy we spend and money to pursue the whole process, like, it's exhausting. We start with, we've got a problem with so-and-so's yard or whatever's going on. We give them time and notice, and you have to have that time elapse, and then we have to give them a fine, and then you don't do that, and then we go to court, and then we got to deal with those pieces. And then if court is successful, we might got to go to court again to get approval to go on their land and do it ourselves. And then we have to apply it to taxes, and this big long out process just because somebody doesn't cut the grass. And so ideally, when I put forward the motion previously, it was around the fact that I wanted to make people's lives easier. And as I look in this, the resource impacts from approving this, additional peace officers' time will likely need to be spent. So I'm actually creating more work for them. And so I struggle with the benefit of that. The other thing is that realistically, I get that it's a tool. It's a tool that can be used and so on and so forth. But I don't necessarily love the idea of the fact that 24 hours after it snowed, without notifying the resident, we could just send somebody out there, do that and whatever. And so I respect that you guys likely are not going to do that, but by approving this, I'm allowing it to happen.
When it's phrased as may, so likely Mark knows more on this, but likely we wouldn't. But however, say someone had let their snow pile up all year and it hadn't been cleared and it was starting to become a safety concern, we wouldn't have to wait that 24 hours. And we wouldn't have to continuously do the process with them. So I think that's more where we're looking at it from, rather than that we're just going to go start clearing people's sidewalks. It just gives us the ability that if we have someone that continuously is doing that, it's a little bit easier from that point of view.
Okay, Councilor Drew.
Oh, I think that's where my question regarding how the policy, whether it's,
and we would
where it
write
comes
that
from, because that's what my concern would be is, yes, we're approving this bylaw, but the policy, that the application of it, we don't really have a ton of control over.
No, and we would, I mean, from my point of view, we're always going, we can't legally can't write a policy that's going to then penalize landowners. So, and it is something that we could bring forward, I'm sure as well, just for general conversation when we're doing.
Yeah, because it says the policy would lay out clear direction of when and how we, so it's that, I think we're stuck on the when and how this would be used, and that's kind of where I'm unsure.
Okay, Councillor Adams.
The one comment I would like to make, I do like the fact that it's more in line with the MGA and what it's stating, and we're cleaning up the bylaw. I do appreciate it's kind of like a fringe benefit from the discussion. But I mirror your concerns as well, as you could tell by my last question, but as long as we're handling it and we have the ability to do it, I guess I'm okay with it.
Okay, Councillor Gramlich.
The problem with the ability is it boils down to interpretation, and 10 years down the road, none of us exist in this room anymore. And now we're interpreting what council of the day and admin of the day wrote for something. I don't know. I'd like it more simple, or else if this is what we're going for, then that's what we're going for, right? Like,
When our just as in addition to that comment, like that's why we have policies internally, is so that wouldn't happen. So yeah,
kind
I
of a
understand where you're coming
safeguard in
from,
place to.
yeah, that's why, because we aren't all ever, we'd like to think we're here forever, but we won't be. So that's why we have policies and procedures.
Well, and the problem I always have with council is like, we only get one shot at this, right? And then later it's all council. You said that this is what you guys wanted. And then we say, well, that's not exactly what I wanted. So I have a question for you, Mark. Put you on the spot. Is this going to make your life easier?
Yeah, I think so. It's just cleaning up the bylaw, in my opinion, quite honestly. It's just a housekeeping thing, bringing it more in line with the MGA, like you say. And to be very honest, most people, when we issue a compliance order or even a door knocker is what we use on a big snowfall, like 90% of the people are full on compliant. We have a handful of delinquents who every year we issue a notice, they don't comply. A lot of them are on Main Street, but a lot of them are throughout the residential neighborhoods. And so perhaps some sections of this would be applied in that case. We have a lot of discretion that we use. And in terms of educating the public about snow removal, that's constant. I mean, you guys even do it through your social media, and you guys talk about that just like we do. It's just an extra tool, I think, to help us out, but in the grand scheme of things, is it going to change how we operate? Not really. I think we're going to continue to operate that we are, because we're effective. We get compliance.
Okay.
My thoughts anyway.
Now, my biggest concern is the abuse of the tool. And so what administration is telling me is that don't worry about the abuse of the tool, because we'll create a policy that makes sure that we don't abuse the tool. So can I have a recommendation that you bring back the policy so we can see what that looks like and how they work in tandem, so that we have some comfort level that that's okay?
Yep. And that when we talked to Brownlee, that was something that came up, and I didn't bring it up because I guess the way I operate is I'm like, we know the rules and we follow them. But that was something that, peace officers go through training as to how to use their discretion and that kind of thing. So, but yes, we can do that. So. Agreed.
I guess if the intent is to have a tool for the peace officers to make it easier to do their job for those 5%, then the wording should be built for that, because right now I feel like the wording's built to hammer the 95 that are already doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Are we gonna table this?
Yeah, so I'd like to make a motion that we table this report to a future meeting when the policy can be looked at in tandem with the bylaw. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. One other piece here from process. And Gary and Joanna, please check this one out. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. Is that the third motion in each one of these, the council had third reading. I think it's supposed to say something about unanimous consent.
Oh, you do need the unanimous consent.
If we're gonna do all readings in one night, there has to be something there. So just check that for their, it says it in here.
I think it says it on that one, but I did miss it on the fees one.
Well, on this
I
one, it
think.
says that the council had third reading of community standards bylaw, but I think there's supposed to be something. about
Or
the
else
word
I
unanimous.
added it and I didn't send the right.
Consent to the third reading. Okay. Yeah, okay, just for the next time it comes. Maybe it's already corrected digitally and on the paper ones it's not.
No, I think we just realized that
Okay.
I'm like, this is all, some of this is, the bylaw thing is new to me. So if there's
Okay.
things that need to be corrected, please let me know.
Okay, let's jump into, can I make a suggestion here on this one?
Should we do
Let's do the other one
Yeah.
first. Okay, so let's jump into F and talk about the service level discussion, and then we'll come back to the facility rates. So we're gonna jump to page 121 in our package. And so Jill, I will say that I appreciate you bringing this information forward. And so this is really generated by council. And so, I think that, we've got a unique scenario here where we've got a facility that thank God we're open for a while again, because after 2 years of being closed a number of times, there's just pent up demand and people want to use that facility. The weather hasn't been great, and so people want to use all the aspects of this facility. And realistically, that's what council wants. We want to see maximum usage out of the things that we have. That being said, council was also ones that thrust upon administration and said, hey, we want to do some stuff a little bit differently here at the 11th hour, and here's your notice and figure it out. And so I think that has led to some feedback from the public because, I don't think council and administration are communicating in a similar fashion about this is what we are going to deliver for service. This is what we can do and kind of go from there. So the point of tonight is to understand what service that we are delivering, agree to it and understand how we're resourcing it so that we actually can accomplish it. So largely, this is not a business report for decision. This would make more sense to committee of the whole, but I know that council's been hearing a lot of stuff. So this will largely be an informal, open discussion. So I just want to start with that. And so I'll turn it over to you, Jill.
Yeah, and I think that's where I kind of wanted to start, is to just talk about how proud I am of everyone over there. I know it seems to be that there's some not so positive feedback, but I look at over there as in the MRC, and we have a whole new staff. Only we have one casual staff that's been there pre-COVID. Everyone else was hired from the front. So this is my restaurant theater background days is front of the house and the back of the house. So, front of the house, the front desk, front customer service people there are all new staff. None of them have worked in a non-COVID time, and they're on their fifth version of operating that building. So while I know that some things aren't the way that everyone would like them to be, the fact that I always say girls, but we have a Colby over there too. So the fact that they can just pivot and get things going and enforce rules, which I think we're a little maybe too heavy on the enforcing the rules thing right now, because that's what they all started off with. So we're working through some customer service pieces. And then on the backside of things, we lost a lot of knowledge when we lost some staff that retired, and we've got some of them back. And so a lot of our focus on that side of things right now has been building up that knowledge. We're taking the time that the ICE is in to work with our staff that are there, because we just made the comment that not all of us are going to be here forever. So we're focusing a lot on working on ICE maintenance, doing some of those plant maintenance items that the public might not see, but that's some of the stuff that we've spent some time focusing on. So, and just given the situation that we're in, we went into, I made a note, I think in there, that Ashley, who's over there, is doing dual program coordinator, Recreation Assistant 3. We did that because we weren't getting anyone in for the program coordinator position, and we knew we had to get programs going. And I was supposed to be able to dedicate more of my time towards programming, and just given the situation that we're in, we haven't been able to do that. So Ashley's taken things. She ran Frost Fest with zero help basically from me. And so, you know, while outwardly it might seem like we have less things going on, I'm so proud of the successes that we have had, and we're working towards bringing those things back up. And we're in a really interesting situation in the fact that we're programming on demand, which is more difficult. You don't have that time to, you know, put as many plans in place and think about some of the things that are involved in programming. And then we're also trying to plan for the fall. So I think that sometimes too, it seems to be that we're saying no to things, but it's not that we're saying, no, it can't happen. We're saying that we're trying to keep up with what we have going now. We're looking at the fall. Let's try and put it there. So I just kind of wanted to make that general comment that, yeah, I haven't been able to give as much time as I want. And I think too, in my mind, I kept thinking that Sean McConnell was going to come back, and he still hasn't. And we have to get ball fields going. We have to do all those things. So it's such a diverse department that we're doing things, but it's just not quite as fast as we normally would like to. So I'm very proud of everyone over there for kind of taking things and running with them and being independent. So, but along with that, sometimes there's things that come, and I'm a big believer in, I can't swoop in there and help them all the time. So sometimes they're making mistakes and we're learning from them. So, but wanted to focus on some of the things that we are doing. So we have a plan in place to reopen the play center. We have a contractor that's coming in. They're going to do a good clean of the play center this weekend. And then we're going to have them come in nightly to do that. So we haven't put out publicly quite yet, because we just want to make sure that we have everything in place with them. One of my big things is I don't want to make a commitment and pull that back. So just want to make sure that we have everything in place with the contractor to clean it. We are going to try and have a little bit more control in place. It used to kind of be a free for all. It's supposed to be parent supervision. So we want people to check in at the front desk with their parent, grab a wristband and head on into the play center, as opposed to kids just dropping in there. So if they have their wristband, we're knowing that they're there. So just working on getting that together and putting that out to the public. Some of our other upcoming programs and initiatives. So this one.
Sorry, Jill.
Yeah.
Just a question. And, you know, and I encourage council as we go through this, because it's an open discussion, rather than wait till the end to go over everything. Let's talk about the topics while we're on the topics.
Yeah.
So we're talking about play center, for example. So what I'm hearing is that the goal is to basically be operational next week.
Yes.
The goal.
I
Okay.
think I'm just, I'm like, everything I do these days doesn't seem to go as planned. So I'm like, but yes, that would be our plan, is to have everything up and going.
So has the
next week.
contractor committed to this weekend? Or
They have, yes.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. And so then we're going to do nightly cleaning on it or whatever else.
Yeah.
And now if I stop over and I want to use the play center, I want to go, I need to check in with the front desk and get a wristband to then go use it.
Yeah.
Can I ask why?
Just because so what we were finding before is that kids, so you're supposed to be 12 and under in there with a parent. So what we were finding before, especially on hockey weekends, is that we had like the U15 team went in there. They're supposed to be running on the track and they're in there. Parents send their kids in because they're watching their sibling play hockey and there's no parental supervision. So at least if we know that they've got their wristband, that they've stopped in and seen the front desk and that they have their supervision, and it's not, oh, my parent's here, they're just going to the bathroom kind of thing. So. Yeah.
Okay.
And I know at 12, you don't quite know their age, but we've kind of confirmed their age with them. So.
Okay. Okay.
We see lots of wear and tear on the play center because it's not used properly, or kids are in there with their shoes on. There's food and drink in there. So we're just hoping to have a little bit more control as far as longevity and keeping the facility clean. And
okay. Yeah. Councillor Adams.
Two things I'd like to touch on since we're doing as we go.
Okay.
First one here with the play center. I do like the idea of the wristband. Honestly, it allows us to track people and usage a lot more and a lot more efficiently.
See.
Just saying. I like
it's
it.
true though. No, and then that is a big part of it. We used to do manual kind of head counts, but we are able to capture it a little bit better. So.
And my other question was just going back a ways now, was on our hours of operation on the Saturday, Sunday from 12 to 4. I understand that was decided a while back as far as usage. Are we seeing that we're having more demand to get outside those hours?
No.
At all? Or have we even tried? Or
we haven't tried, but the comments that I've had from staff is that
there might be more demand. I shouldn't say no, but drop-in wise, no. It's very quiet on the weekends. Rental wise, there are some additional demands for that. That's just hard because it varies per weekend, and lots of people, I think honestly this year is because the weather's still really awful outside. What we noticed in past years is that as soon as the weather gets nice, people would rather have their kid's birthday party outside, but we're getting, and that's, I think, one of the I shouldn't say problems, because we're booked. So if we have to turn people away, it means that it's because we're booked. But we have lots of people that they're looking at the weather. They wanted to have their kid's birthday party at the park. The weather's really crappy still, and they're phoning us on a Thursday trying to host their birthday party on a Saturday. And we don't have the time because someone else already booked it. So the 12 to 4 on the weekends is something that we definitely could look at. However, that's all we're budgeted for right now. So we'd have to have that conversation at a different level as to if, yeah.
Councillor Drew.
I was just going to say some of the feedback that we are getting from the public does have to do with the weekend hours. And I think that has to do with the weather hasn't been great.
Yeah.
Also in the summer, it's one of the facilities with air conditioning. So there is, I think, some demand for extended weekend hours. And I personally would like to look at, I know this was decided in a previous council, so I would like to see us look at maybe changing that service level with regards to the weekend.
Okay, we'll come back to that. I'm making notes here. Okay.
So some of the other things we have coming up in this one, I'm especially proud of because so we have adult skating lessons coming up. And so we have Kennedy Hartman working for us, who is unfortunately going to be leaving us at the end of the summer because she's going to pursue schooling for recreation. So I really tried to talk her into staying and talked her into there's some great online courses, but she's got her heart set on it, which I can appreciate because that's my background. So Kennedy created a lesson plan for adult skating. She's running it, she's teaching it, she's done the promotion. So I just think that that's a really good thing to celebrate for her, is that we've provided her with that experience and everything as well. So she's running that. That's coming up and has been promoted. So we will be introducing evening pickleball times again, because I know that's a demand. So just some background on that. Seasonally, and I was thinking this as I was sitting here thinking about what I was going to talk about. I was like, we haven't had a full year of normal operation yet. So we do things seasonally. So right now we don't have evening pickleball drop-in because Minor Ball's running their spring camp. Minor Ball's run their spring camp since the MRC has been open. We met with them a couple of weeks ago and they were just saying how much they appreciate having the field house to use. So I know we're getting some complaints about pickleball right now, but that's something that seasonally we won't be able to offer because won't be able to offer at the MRC. So that was my other thing. We're going to start looking at if we can get the joint use agreement up and going again and potentially offer some things within the schools. But we've dedicated that time and we have agreement with Minor Ball that every Monday and Wednesday from I think mid-March to this year, because the weather's so crappy, we're still going, but till usually the end of April, we do their spring camp. So that does
the whole
impact
night,
the
Monday,
drop-ins.
Wednesday, the whole evening kind of thing, or?
Basically, yes. I think they start at 5:30 and go till 8 or 9.
Okay.
There used to be the joint agreement in place between
It still
with
is
the college
currently
as well.
It's the college, no.
So back in the day, the Northern Lakes College gym, there was a joint use agreement for that as well.
There was.
Have we
but
looked?
Gary can speak.
Gary wants to participate.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was an agreement. It's actually the same agreement that speaks about us operating the pool.
Okay.
That was in place, allowing use of the gym. That facility's been taken off for town usage. I'm gonna say before I started here, so around 2017, 2018, the agreement was amended. The gym is no longer part of that.
I was just wondering, because we're sounding like we're having some space constraint, which is a good problem. This is
It
a good
is,
problem to
yeah.
have, is that we're having bookings and we're having some space constraints. So I know they have a gym there, so I'm just curious if that's a possibility.
And we do work with the college, like the climbing wall is, I'm like, that's on my radar, but not going yet. But that is something that we will work with them on when we have space. So, or want to have some access to space. So that is something that we haven't quite got there yet.
So just to clarify, I mean, we still have a joint use agreement with the schools. The schools use our facility for free. And in turn, or for mostly for free, I should say, there's a few things we charge for, but in turn, we could use school gyms for public programming. But because of COVID, we weren't permitted to be in their facilities. So that is the hope that if we can get that changed and be able to do some more programming in some of the schools.
I had a question on the school usage. And I love that they're using it, so this might sound wrong. Why are they using it when they have their own facilities? Like, is it to use different sports that they don't have in the gym there?
That and they've scheduled too many gym classes for what they have
So
available.
It is a
So-
scheduling conflict for okay, because I just out of curiosity, if you go there and they're playing volleyball, I'm like, there's a volleyball court at their gym, but okay, so it's overlap.
Yeah, and that is something that, and I can't remember, I did actually need to look at that one before I came, but I forgot. But I can't remember, like our joint use agreement is got a term on it. And I think it's about time that I think we're due for looking at it again, but that is something that we do need to revisit with them. And it's hard because I see where they're coming from, that they need space, but at the same time, they don't pay to use space, and currently we aren't getting use of their space. So I think we have to have some clear parameters around it. We don't want to charge them, but we do have to have some, like we can't. Oh.
Okay, Councillor Adams.
My understanding is that now that the rules have changed, it should be opening up now.
There should be.
Especially in the senior high and E.G. Wallstrom schools.
We've never been able to access the senior high. We only get access, and we couldn't access E.G. Wallstrom previously. We could only access C.J. Schurter, and part of it is that could have changed since we last talked, but they have to have a staff member in the school when we're there. So that's part of our.
Saying pre-COVID, we didn't have access to the schools?
Based on the principal.
Do you recall, let's pretend
Yeah, to some schools, yeah.
pretend we gain access to the schools again. Do you recall what our hours of availability were? It's like after 4, after 5?
I can't remember exactly, but it was evening time. And it's only to their gym space because I had asked them about doing additional programming. And then, yeah, it has to be when they have a staff member in the school. So that kind of, and then there's restrictions to access, like which doors we use and all that kind of stuff.
Doesn't
So
sound
it's-
like much of a joint use agreement.
No, so that is something that we do need to work on with them. And just kind of on that note, I know I did have some comments from soccer because we had minimal programming that we did run in the schools, but one of them, the core programs that we did run there was Walk Your Way to Fitness or Power Walking. We changed the name based on Power Walking implied high intensity. So for a while we couldn't use that. But they used to have access to CJ Schurter. Yeah, all the ins and outs of things. So they used to have access to CJ Schurter. That didn't happen because of COVID. So we did at the request of the participants. So I guess so I'll finish my one thought before I move on to the other one. So we did have a demand for them to run a spring session because we didn't get to run a fall session based on everything. So we did run that, which then did cut into soccer's time. So really, it's such a hard balance right now. Everyone has this demand. And so I always just call it my happy balance. I'm trying to find, and we're all trying to find that happy balance of everything because we just don't have enough space to house everything. And we still have those groups of people that just want to come in and use the facility whenever they want. And because we're busier and because we're booked, that's not always a possibility, or the time is very limited as to what they can use. So it's a good thing that we're collecting that revenue off of the rentals and that we're busy and that we have some guaranteed people in the facility, but there's that other group of people that want to just come in and they want to use the facility and they want to have that free flow drop-in time. So again, finding that happy balance, and that's something that, and we do have those scheduled drop-in times, but that's something that we've found in the arena and where we've created those blocks of times that are only available for private rentals as opposed to user groups or public sessions. So that's something in the fall. And so, like I said, we're planning on demand, but we're also trying to put a good program in place in the fall, because that's kind of what, this is normally our down season where we're doing all our program planning. So, you know, maybe that's something that we have to look in the field house, is that these times are just open drop-in, these times are rental times and that kind of thing. But then we get the comments that, well, I don't want my kid's birthday party to be 1 to 2, 1:30 to 3:30 is really what I'm looking for. So you're never going to make everyone happy, but just trying to provide those opportunities for everyone. So
okay.
yeah, so that kind of got off track of what we also have upcoming, but we also are offering, because this is something that we've had feedback on, we're offering floor hockey on the dry pad. So we have an adult time and a youth time coming up. So we haven't done any promotion around this, but we're going to have an 80s rock and glow roller skate on the dry pad. We've got community cleanup coming up, which is out and promoted. We're going to participate in the Community Better Challenge, which is something through participation that we did last June. It's something that the whole community can participate in, whether it's organized or passive. So we're going to do some promotion around that. Last year, for a while, we were one of the top active communities in Alberta for a bit. So our goal this year is we want to win that prize. So we talked about that at our programmers meeting today. So I know internally we had teams within the town. So we were going to start challenging other businesses to do that. So that's something that we're working on. We're getting Summer Splash up and going for the first time in a few years. So that's a bit of a project. We're starting to plan for Canada Day. I wrote down the date, but I didn't bring it with me. But in June, I believe, June 8th, but don't hold me to that. We're having a bike rodeo. Mark might know because he is helping. Do you remember the date for the bike rodeo? Okay.
Apparently it's June 8th, Mark.
I don't know. Ashley still me today. And we're trying to utilize the dry floor for some more activities. So there are a couple of times. So again, yay, the field house is booked. This is great revenue, but we're hosting well, you guys know, the Oilers hockey school, which takes up the field house. And then right after that, we're hosting the college's convocation. So there's going to be like a whole, so just to prepare everyone, and we're going to do good promotion around this. There's like over a week where the field house and the dry pad aren't available. So we're trying to come up with some different ideas for things. We've ordered a portable pickleball net. So one of our thoughts was if the field house is closed, then we can throw that out on the dry pad and potentially look at putting some lines down. Not as great of a spot as the field house, but it's something. Or if we're busy out there, we're going to try and look at, or busy in both spots, we'll kind of look at where else we might be able to put that. On that note too, when we do the tennis courts, we're going to line one of the courts with pickleball lines. So yeah, and just some other notes there too is that we're continuously working on customer service. One of the things that when I was talking to Ashley there that she noted was a big barrier before. We were still holding regular staff meetings, but they were on Zoom because we're all not supposed to be together. We had people homesick and all that kind of stuff. So yes, we were still having staff meetings, but they weren't as impactful. So they're back to in-person staff meetings. At each staff meeting, they cover customer service topics and they have started to cover scenarios. So we had an odd one yesterday at the MRC as far as just someone coming into the building with some odd problems. So they were going to take that and debrief and use that as a customer service scenario. Yeah, and I think mostly what I notice over there is that it's a new young staff and I really, really appreciate them, but sometimes things just aren't looked after in the way that people are used to having them looked after. And I also think, which is very nice to them, but they know how overwhelmed everyone is and they sometimes are hesitant to pass things along because they don't want to overwhelm us. Like today, Ashley talked to me. She's like, we need to update all of our signage in here and make it a little bit happier and friendlier and easier to understand. She's like, but I don't want to bring it forward to you because I don't know if that's going to be too much for you. I was like, no, that's a great idea. Like that's something that we definitely need to work on. So they're picking up those things and they're seeing them and they're wanting to work on them. It's just sometimes it takes a little bit more guidance for things. So one thing I've noticed too that does create a little bit of confusion with the hours on the weekends is that Susan's Kitchen, so our concession operator never used to be open into the summer season, but Susan's Kitchen has really been successful in their operation. So they wanted to stay open. So they have asked to operate slightly different hours than we do, which I know is difficult sometimes to work around. So if we had the opportunity to expand our hours to be a little bit closer to them, that might be a helpful customer service piece as well. So, yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's get into some questions and comments. So I will start by saying, Jill, I appreciate, we do have a number of short-term or long-term vacancies here in a number of different positions. And so we're constantly asking our staff to do their job, and usually someone else's and sometimes two people's. And so council is very appreciative of people stepping up. I also say that I recognize too that our business has adapted a lot in the last 2 years as we pivot to restrictions and non-restrictions and back to other things. And this is what the box is defined, and constantly we're having to go back to the province because they're redefining the box, and it has been a big question mark. And so thankfully we're moving forward in that. We're also seeing usage that we haven't seen in the past, which I think is great because it's really what council is striving towards. So I guess the question comes down to, you know, is there an appetite to expand some of the hours? And then if so, how could that actually happen? And realistically, you know, what do we need to do to resource that? The other thing is that I think council needs to have some discussion around the fact that, is this something we intend to do on a more permanent basis? So if we're changing our summer hours, is it just for this month because we're leaving ice in, or is this something where we want to head down the road to leave ice in till the end of May every year? Or do we want to leave ice in all year round? And so part of that comes from evaluating the demand. And realistically, council is evaluating the demand from this, and that's it. So I guess, do we have any target metrics? God, I can't believe I'm saying the Steve question here, right? Please, but like, is there something to understand that, like, okay, we've got 4 hours of ice available every night and it's booked every night and people are asking for more, or we have 4 hours every night, but it's only being used for 2 on Tuesdays and Thursdays? Like, how do we look at all that stuff? And so
So through ActiveNet, which is our booking and registration software, we track all that. We also do, as far as like usage stats, we do manual, just once an hour snapshots of who's in there. But through ActiveNet, we can tell you all the ice bookings, what's available, what's booked, and then we can also tell you who's utilizing the drop-ins and everything like that. So
okay, so I've heard that there's only 2 hours of ice available most times or whatever else, but it says here that I'm basically open 8 to 8. So there's 12 hours of ice available.
Yeah, but I think it's because people have booked things. So when we were talking the last time, all of our, except for Fridays, we have one group in, but most of the times it's because people have already booked in. So it's the prime time spots were taken. So,
okay. So when I hear the comment to 2 hours ice, it's because that's 2 hours all that's left that's available.
Yeah. So
realistically, it's booked from 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock every night.
Yeah, it's booked from, I can't tell you exactly what it is, but we have, there is like sporadic times, but generally, so yeah, Mondays, we don't have bookings available just because we still have to staff parks. So Mondays is when we're trying to get out and do that. And we also are staffing Saturday. So Monday, we've given Dan, who stays inside Sunday. I use some terminology from my other time. So stay inside means stay at the MRC. We've given him Sunday, Monday off because that's the comment too, and something that, you know, our staff are what keeps us going. They look forward, and I look forward to, and I mean, I can change my perspective, but I look forward to when the ice comes out because it's kind of like that sigh of relief that you're done and you get a little bit of time to catch up. So that was their request, that if they did stay inside to look after the ice, that they got at least one weekend day off to spend time with their family. They work weekends and evenings all year long. So they just wanted to have that. So that's part of the reason we've done that, because I want to retain those staff that we've had. So
okay, so Sundays we're not open 12
Sundays we're not open for ice bookings, and same with Mondays.
Okay. So Sundays and Mondays there is no ice booking. Okay.
So that's essentially the week. You could get them the 2 days, right? Like they have a weekend. It's just not
Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah, so Saturday they can, like Saturday, there's bookings available, but Sundays, what we find is that it's generally quieter in there in
Okay.
the summer, so.
Okay, Councillor Adams, sorry.
Is it possible to request that active net report to be presented to council at some point?
Yep.
Either on a, I don't know, weekly, monthly, day, like some sort of
So
breakdown?
it's part of the performance metrics that we do that I think we're just finishing putting together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But yeah, I mean, if we're wanting to look at service levels as far as expanding, that's something that would probably be a good thing to put together. And that is what we did when we decided to reduce hours, is we put it together to justify those hours and why we made those decisions.
Yeah, and so part of it in the past, where we did reduce hours or whatever else, it, you know, part of it is saving money and part of it is recognizing that, you know, traditionally ice comes out. You see dramatic drop in usage in the facility. Weather might be different cooperating, you know, I know of years that we're camping in April. And you get out and use it. So, you know, a lot of it is going to be weather specific, but to be honest, to see that we're increasing amount of programming that's available over there. You have groups that are creating programming that's available over there. We're seeing more use in our field house. Like these are good problems to be up against, right? Other comments? So looking at this from the big picture, what I would say is the ideal scenario is for administration to bring a report forward that says, hey, look it, we were open for these 2 months from April to May, expanded some of those service levels and so on. This is what we're seeing. This is where we think we should tweak hours. This is how we resource it. There's obviously a budget impact that comes in, and then it's all evaluated. So I would see that as the next steps. Does that make sense to everybody? And I guess
so just from my perspective, are you guys looking at that for this year? My one concern is that we're still, I know everyone's tired of hearing this, but we're still very low on staff. So like if we wanted to all of a sudden expand hours, we just have to also look at hiring additional staff for that. And we are in that process, but that was something I wanted to share too. It's like, we had 3.
So right now, what my understanding is that we've reduced down to summer hours, but we've expanded some of the uses by basically keeping ice in. Theoretically, the only difference between every other year and this year is we've left ice in because we're changing. We went to the hours that we would normally change for everything else, right? So we left ice in, but it has a heavy impact because it's labor intensive. And so we're not spending as much time in the parks when we would normally be doing that. So our next,
and that's partially weather too. So
right.
Yeah.
Our next bit of public feedback is going to be about playgrounds and parks and where are we spending our time in there. You know, so I guess the question will be is how are we resourcing that gap? Like, let's say it gets nice tomorrow, right? We're still running ice until the end of May. And then it's not like when we flip off the switch, everyone goes the next day, whatever. There's this decommissioning piece that has to happen. And I know you guys have talked about just potentially leaving ice in the whole time.
Yeah.
Because from a resource and a monetary perspective, it might make the most sense. So I guess the question I would ask is where are we headed and how are we filling those gaps?
So we have engaged our contractors and they're picking up some pieces for us. We have, like I said, got a contractor in to look after the play center.
Okay.
So that opens up time for staff that way. We don't really need 2 staff in the arena until those peak times. So that person that does, because we have found that we need 2 staff on to do some of the tasks in the evening if possible. So that person.
Staff being like a front desk and 2 more?
No, it's like 2 people in the arena just because we're getting back-to-back bookings. And this is something we have to figure out service level wise. And depending on how our staffing goes, but just the expectation, I have a different expectation, but the expectation was that we have all these things kind of getting done in the evening, but I think some of them could be switched to daytime stuff. So we just have to play around with that. But
so you're playing with the schedule to find
we're working on
optimization
that.
and efficiency. Right?
But we've also can engage a contractor, and this is what we did last year at the MRC to do some more of those cleaning tasks. Likely if we do keep the ice in, there's going to be sometimes, so we have real ice that we had installed as part of an energy efficiency grant. So that's it takes the oxygen out of the cold water. Gary can speak better to this if I'm not explaining it totally correctly. Or maybe Gary should just explain it because he explains it better.
Real ice is a cold water ice generation system. It deaerates your water. So it takes your bubbles out of your water. So it allows you to put water that you use in a flood front in a Zamboni at a much colder temperature. It also allows us to run our ice a little bit warmer because we don't need such a cold ice to refreeze the hot water that we're putting on top of it. It's a tried and tested product that's being used in arenas all over the country.
Past we use real ice and now we're using more real ice.
Yeah.
We're going to use real ice.
Real
The
ice.
challenge is when you go from converting from having traditional ice with traditional floods of hot water to using real ice, you need time for the two surfaces to bond. And there is a whole procedure of doing that. And one of the pieces could possibly be is looking at sometime in June where we would actually not do any ice bookings.
So our plan.
To use that time to do the conversion.
And we also still have to fix the heaters that are in Arena 1. We have a temporary fix in there right now, but they're full of junk basically. So we have to get a hydrovac in there to suck everything out. So we wanted to make sure that no one was utilizing the ice surface, and we figured that would take about a week for repair. So we'll have some downtime if we do keep the ice.
The idea is in June right now, we potentially are going to leave the ice in, but we're going to deal with a whole bunch of maintenance pieces and there wouldn't be anyone could book ice.
And then when we bring back, so then in talking with Wayne, part of getting those two ice sheets or the real ice and the other real ice to bond is that it needs to be skated on. So our plan was to do like a big ice sail promotion to try and get people out to skate during that time in end of June, beginning of July to try and get that going. So
okay.
I was like, anyone, I grew up summer skating, so that's my thing. But anyways, yeah.
And just to back up a little bit, when you're talking about resources, we're talking a lot about the MRC, but it's the same operations crew that looks after parks. Now we contracted our mowing piece of parks operations out last year. That worked quite well from our standpoint. We have had conversations with our contractor about picking up some pieces in the park side of things if we can't get out, recognizing that we're short-staffed. To be able to pick those up. We haven't gone that far yet because obviously the weather outside
waiting to see how the thing
it's not park season quite yet, but we've had those conversations with our contractor for they're very willing to, actually they have stepped in and did a few tasks for us.
Because typically what happens, we shut down the arena and we take all those staff and move them outdoors. Now we're going to try to maintain 2 service levels in 2 different areas and we still have some vacancy pieces. So the idea is bring some contractors in one area, take some pressure off, bring in contractors in another area, take some pressure off and maintain both.
We've identified some of the tasks that we will be continuing to do ourselves as well as what we'll be contracting. But yeah, that's the conversation we've had.
I would say if we choose to do this another season, this isn't a good plan. So we should look at some better long-term planning, but it's working kind of right now. So
okay.
On that side of things, we've been lucky that the weather hasn't been great because we haven't had a huge demand on parks, but I am interested to see how this all works out once parks picks up. So.
Okay. So knowing that, then I guess a question from seeing what's going on, having a plan is one thing, having ideas another. So we threw an idea at you and you guys are trying to plan on the fly here. So knowing that, is that idea worth pursuing in future years from what you're experiencing right now with usage and so on and so forth?
I'm actually surprised at the usage. It's still not great. But the feedback I've gotten from some of the user groups was if they'd known further in advance, then they would have done some better planning too, which again, I appreciate. But so I think giving them some more notice, we could from, who was I can't even remember, someone from another community phoned me. No, it was the guy that was doing board cleaning phoned and he said, we're about the only community that he deals with in Northern Alberta that still has ice in. So if we knew, and this takes time, but if we knew that we were keeping ice in, there's hockey schools that we could recruit. There's other things that we could do. It's just takes, just that little bit of planning. I would like to work on a better plan with staffing because I know that's for them and it's just a change in the way of thinking. But I know we all just, like I said, breathe that sigh of relief that the ice is done, the craziness is done. You get a month to kind of regroup and then you go back out you go over to parks and the weather's nice. And so just being conscious of them too, that we're not burning them out. But I think a lot of it's in the way we plan it and the way we present it. So if we had some time and we could talk to them about things, then.
So the idea is that we get some information, we evaluate and talk about a plan. Your communication is like, hey, council, when do you want that plan? And I would say that we want that plan when you're ready to bring it to us. So realistically, a plan would have additional resources that would make your life easier. So I'm thinking the longer you wait to bring it, the less strategic it is to the organization. So I'm not looking for it next week, but if we talk about it in November, I don't know if that's really strategic and helps out the organization. So I will say from our perspective, this is a frustration always being a counselor is that, we see that the group could use some extra help and we want to dive in there, but that's not our role, right? Like
I know I kind of pushed back on advertising the other week. This when we have all the information there. It just is a matter of pulling it together. So I don't think that we just have to put it together. So, yeah.
Okay. So realistically, when do you think you'd bring it back?
I don't know the council meetings in June, but I would say sometime in June, we could bring it back.
So ideally along the way, the messaging coming back from council is we're excited to see facilities being used. We're not excited to hear about people being burnt out or whatever else. So if there's additional resources being required, it sounds like you guys are identifying those things. Contractors is one option. Technology is another option. Systems is another option. More people is another option. And so we're encouraging you guys to explore those and let us know what you need from us to be able to do that.
Just encourage you guys to, like, a lot of the comments you're hearing, I haven't heard. So encourage them to bring it forward to the front desk or to me. So that, because I'm like,
we consistently do.
Okay, that's fine. But just, I think that's my biggest thing. And I'm like, I can't solve a problem if I don't know what's out there. So I think you can tell them all you want, but they'll do what they want. So I appreciate that too. So.
Okay.
I think that's part of our role is to bring things to you because I don't know, people find it uncomfortable or don't like confrontation or whatever. So I think that it's not coming from us wanting to like attack operations or the MRC, but it's just when we hear these things, this is our way of voicing it. This is our way of facilitating the residents to voice it.
Sure. And I appreciate too that you guys are then dealing with some decisions that were made in the past and trying to fix that too. So yeah.
And we're all in uncharted territory.
And I think honestly, I think my husband had some really good insight. He's like, I think everyone feels like everything was taken away from them. And now that they can have it back, they just want it back and they wanted it yesterday. And so that's what we're dealing with. And it's hard for us because we're still, playing catch up. So I totally appreciate that. I mean, we've lived most of my son's life in COVID. So now that we can do things like, I just want to get out and do everything. But so
I don't find people's patience level is higher.
No, not at all.
So I'll just leave it at that.
Could I just make a suggestion? Could we maybe get a motion to bring that report back just so we have it tracked?
Sure. I'll make a motion that administration prepare a report for possible expansion of service delivery and hours at the MRC. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Okay. Moving along here, our next one is recreation facility rates bylaw. So this is one that we discussed previously. I'm bringing it back again here for discussion. And I'll let Councillor Graham lead this one. I just got I got to step out for like a minute and a half. Okay, 2 minutes. So actually, why don't we just take 2 minutes?
Yeah.
And then we'll get started here again.
I'm just gonna go fill up my water.
Okay. There, I got lights. Call this meeting back to order there. So last one, recreation facility rates bylaw. Jill, I know you brought this to us previously and council tabled it for discussion. At this meeting, do you have any new information to add? Oh yeah, Jill, your mic's not on. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. So I just clarified the fee structure for membership rates a little bit. And then we also realized that we hadn't put the lifeguards named it. So the Whibbit Warrior pool inflatable. So the big pool inflatable was missing off the fee list. So we've added that. And then the corporate, I made a mistake on the corporate fees calculation. So I corrected that. And I think I had 2019 as a reference for a couple of things. So I updated that as well. So otherwise it's, yeah, the same. And I did just want to comment too. I know there was some concerns over fees, just making sure that they were still affordable for families and everything. The way that the fees do work out, the child stays the same rate for 2022 and 2023. So just, you know, if there's some concerns there, I wanted to make sure that that was pointed out, as that one stays the same based on the calculation. So that's something there. And then just to comment to you that this doesn't go into effect until September. So that would be, allow us some time to get those programs up and going if people weren't feeling that there was value there. If that's, I don't know if that's a comment, but just to say, if that's some of the comments that are going by September, our plan would be that we have, like, we're back to normal, fully normal, as far as having like our schedule planned from usually we do September to December and then January to March. So just to comment on that as well.
Okay. Questions, comments from council? Let's get into it. Ready, set, go. Councilor Drew.
I was just going to say that my commentary that I think that the fees not being increased until September is a good thing, especially because we're not back to, we're better than we were in the pre-COVID times with the restrictions and all of that, or whatever COVID times. But I think we need to show the public the full complement of programming and services before we can.
No, and I can, when I was reflecting back, I can appreciate that. And that's why we purposely, like last year, we should have done a fee review, but we purposely didn't, because we didn't feel that there was any additional value to things when we were restricting everything, and why we didn't do a lot of promotion around membership sales, because we weren't operating normally, or else there was some people in the community that couldn't access our facilities.
So I would expect in the fall that we would have some type of communications promotion strategy regarding this.
Yeah, and then our plan would be that we're getting back to our community program guide as well. So that was something that I spent a lot of time and had it all ready to go. And then September came and things changed restriction wise again. So yeah, so I just wanted to comment that too. So
thanks.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Going once, going twice, any motions? Councilor Giroux, you're.
I'll make a motion that community service recreation and facility rates bylaws 06/2022 receives first reading.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. Councilor Hughes.
All right. Be resolved that community services, recreation and facility rates bylaw 06/2022 receives second reading.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. Councilor Adams.
That community services recreation facility rates bylaw 06/2022 be given unanimous consent for third reading.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. Councilor Gramlich.
That community services recreation and facility rates bylaw number 06/2022 receives third and final reading.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Okay, Mayor's Corner. I know we're gonna try and be quick, but man, I gotta tell you, there's lots going on. So first off, Parks reached out for a meeting on Friday last week to schedule a meeting with us, with myself and the Reeve, two CAOs and their representatives from Parks this morning to talk about, they wanted to officially sign off on the agreement, took some pictures, want to talk about operationally how this will work. And so I think there's some pieces that council isn't aware of. So I did want to share this with them. So first off, I wish we all could have been there. And in hindsight, we should have, because it was probably one of those meetings where I felt like, 5, 6, 7 years of work actually culminated into something that achieved something. And so, so the MD has purchased a piece of equipment. They've purchased a beach grooming piece of equipment already. It should be here in approximately 6 weeks. It will be put on a tractor supplied by the MD, and there's going to be training from town staff and park staff to be able to use it. And won't just exclusively be used in Devonshire Beach, but throughout the MD in different areas. Their intention is to move right away to expanding the beach area. So right now, the handicap ramp, where we see approximately 400 meters of natural, somewhat picked, somewhat cleaned up, is now going to see more of a groomed piece of beach, and it's going to be expanded from 400 meters to 650 to 700 meters to maybe 750. So it'll be almost a double in size as things go along. They want to maintain the south portion of the beach where the stairs are, that would be just west of the parking lot for a dog use area. They've seen some benefit of using that. So it'll be somewhat a bit of a groomed area, but maintain a smaller portion. Increasing some garbage cans and things out there. We talked about adding some tables. One of the big things too is that they're interested in promotion of food trucks and facilities. Could a company do boat rentals out there? Could you do blow up amenities? Could you rent towels? All these different things. And so we talked about, how does that actually happen? And so realistically, Parks is going to be one that says, here's a process and there's an application you can go through. But I think that there's an ability and a necessity for the town to kind of promote that those opportunities exist. And so Jordan was there, and we'll have to work on feedback that goes out to the community to say, hey, listen, if there was ever an opportunity and this is something you wanted to pursue, we need to connect you with the parks, have those discussions and go from there. Example, is there an opportunity for the entrepreneur classes that exist in some of the high schools right now? Some of the work that Community Futures is doing in the schools to promote and push entrepreneurs. This could be a great summer student program to put something together and run your own little beach business. Other pieces in there. So that they also want to have a collection area for some of the driftwood. So for artisans and people to use, we would collect some of this driftwood and put it in a separate location that people could then have free access to. We would limit the people that you're out there on Saturday afternoon and you see the guy hiding the piece of wood under his coat as he's running up the beach there, feeling like he just stole something. We would say, hey, you know what, we encourage this, helps clean up the beach, and love to see what you can do with this and contribute it back. So some great opportunities moving there, but I wanted council to know what's going on with those pieces. I recognize too that I need to step up my communication and our communication as council and some of the pieces that are going out. And this is a time of year when things get active. And so I know that there's frustration over some of the camps that we're seeing in regards to homelessness in our community. There's frustration over the usage in some of our facilities. There's frustrations and just how we're moving forward out of COVID. I talk about patience and demand, and things are changing. And, we're trying to adapt to all of these things on the fly. And on the other side there, we do have continuous resource problems. We have problems getting supplies of product. We have problems getting cost of those supplies, getting projects done, and getting people to fill positions. And so it's not easy, but so we have to communicate. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that the public doesn't see. And so I recognize as a council that we have to step up on some of that communication and send that out. So over the next couple of days, we'll be doing some video stuff with Jordan, and I've talked to some of you guys individually behind the scenes on different topics that you guys are playing in that would love to see some feedback on that as well. Council met at 4 o'clock today. And one of the topics that we did discuss was around HR and understanding the impacts on our organization. And so one is about the fact that when you go to advertise and try and find people, if you don't get the applications or you don't get qualified applicants, it's tough. And we're up against an issue there. We've got information starting to trickle in, and we've hired a consultant that's going to do a bunch of work to look at our rates and are we competitive with our neighbors? Are we staying in the ballpark? And some of the early indications on that is that we have some gaps. And so that comes at a significant resourcing cost. And council is going to have to figure out how to deal with that. And so we expect those things to come in the coming weeks. The other thing I think is that there's a lot of business people in council, and the one thing that we recognize in our own business is sickness isn't exactly what it used to be. The days of, hey, I just don't feel good in the morning and I got the sniffles, but I'll come to work at 4, it doesn't happen anymore. And I say that from a restaurant. I guess the rest of the businesses work from 8 to 4. But the point is that, you know, people that are sick aren't just gone for a few hours or half a day or maybe just that day. And those things have a significant impact on our organizations as well. And so we're feeling that within the town of Slave Lake. I'm feeling that in my other things. And so these aren't excuses. They're just realities that we're all dealing with, and trying to figure out how to best manage those pieces is going to be interesting as we move forward, because I don't see a lot of that changing anytime soon. We've got an ANSA meeting coming up here shortly that looks like it might need to be rescheduled because of a location issue. So we'll be seeing if we move that or not. The CAO conversation with Murray this morning as well, Reeve the MD. And one of the things that we did in the past is the 2 CAOs and the Reeve and Mayor would get together to just talk about some things that are on both of our radars to make sure that we stay up on things. You know, what's obvious right now is we're on 2 different cycles. Our council was into strategic planning and budget early in the election process. They focused on other issues and are now doing those things now. And so there's this gap where we're not having a lot of communication, but there's a lot of these things going on behind the scenes. So we want to make sure that that loop gets closed up a little bit. So we're meeting on Friday, and I'll share some information with council next week. One of the other things too is that council committed in the budget process that we want to do some media relations training. And so we've got that coming up here in the next week or so. The other thing is you guys are going to start to see a bit of pushback from me because this is the time of year that we honestly get the most requests for council to participate in X, Y, Z. And so I'm starting to see a lot of those things come across. I'll be filtering some to Joanna here, but there's already spots where I'm supposed to be in 2 or 3 places at the same time, and it's just not going to work. So between grad events coming up, community events coming up, different workshops that we've been requested to attend, that the demand level is high. You usually see that bottom out at the end of June, and July and August become a quieter thing. But June is, hey, can you come attend and spend some time with us type of month. So just throwing that on council's radar. Other than that, I'll leave the rest for another day. Motion to call it a night. Councillor Adams, any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor?